You've heard the term Greenwich Mean Time a million times, right? You see those letters GMT all over the place. But behind that simple name is this incredibly tangled story, a story about speeding trains, a wobbly planet, and, believe it or not, atomic clocks. So, let's untangle it.
You know when you're setting a clock on your phone or maybe scheduling an international call, and you see options for both GMT and UTC. Have you ever just stopped and thought, wait a minute, aren't those the same thing? Well, the answer is, kinda. And the story of why it's so complicated is really the story of how we, as a civilization, figured out how to tame time itself.
Okay, so to really get why GMT was such a game changer, you have to understand the world before it. Let's zip back to the mid-1800s. It was a world of countless local times. Every single town, every city, set its clocks by the sun. When the sun was at its highest point in the sky, bam, it was noon. Sounds simple, right? But noon in one town was not noon in the next town over. And for a world on the brink of an industrial explosion, this created absolute chaos. I mean, just look at this quote. This is from a letter written to a newspaper back in 1880. A legal clerk is complaining that because of the weird difference between the local sun time and the new Greenwich time, their polling booths were opening at 8:13 in the morning and closing at 4:13 in the afternoon. Can you imagine trying to run a country on a schedule like that? It was just absurd.
But the real push for a change came from the Industrial Revolution. All of a sudden, you've got these massive railway networks, and their timetables had to be perfect, otherwise trains would literally crash into each other. You had giant ships crossing oceans that needed a single stable time reference just to figure out where on Earth they were. The world was shrinking fast, and it was screaming out for one single, reliable clock for everyone.
And where did the solution come from? Well, it came from the very heart of that revolution, Britain's railways. They were the ones on the front lines, dealing with the danger and confusion. They knew this patchwork of local times had to go. So they decided they needed one single railway time, and they picked the time being kept at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich.
And once this idea took hold, it spread like wildfire. In 1847, it's just for the railways. By 1880, it's the official legal time for all of Great Britain. Then, and this is the huge one, just 4 years later, the whole world gets together and agrees to make Greenwich the prime meridian, the 0-degree starting line for global longitude. That decision basically made Greenwich's local time the world's reference point. It became the anchor for the entire planet.
And this is the Shepherd Gate clock at the Royal Observatory. It was one of the very first clocks to ever show GMT to the public, and it's still set to it today. This is it. This is ground zero for global time, a real, tangible piece of history you can go and see right now.
So, we had a physical home for time, an international agreement. Problem solved, right? We finally had our standard. Well, not quite. Just as the world was celebrating GMT, scientists were realizing there was a deep, fundamental flaw. And the flaw wasn't with Greenwich. It was with planet Earth itself. It turns out our planet is actually a pretty lousy clock. See, the clue is right there in the name. Greenwich Mean Time. Mean is just a fancy mathematical word for average. So GMT isn't the actual moment the sun is highest in the sky at Greenwich every day. Nope, it's the annual average of that moment. So why on earth would they use an average? Because our planet just isn't a perfect timekeeper. For starters, its orbit around the sun isn't a perfect circle. It's an oval. So sometimes we're closer to the sun and moving faster, and sometimes we're farther away and moving slower. Throw in our planet's famous 23.5-degree tilt, and what you get is a solar day that actually changes in length throughout the year. GMT was this brilliant trick, a kind of engineered fudge to smooth out that celestial wobble. And just how big of a wobble are we talking about here? It's pretty wild. The actual solar noon at Greenwich can be off from the clock on the wall by as much as 16 minutes. Now, back in the 19th century, that was totally close enough. But for the 20th century, well, that was a huge problem. Yeah, because by the mid-20th century, our technology was leaping forward. We had things like global aviation, satellite navigation, and digital communications that needed a level of precision the Earth just couldn't deliver. We needed a time standard that was almost unbelievably accurate. We had to move on from watching the stars to watching atoms. And this right here is the great leap. On the left, you've got GMT. It's based on the Earth's rotation, it's beautiful, it's natural, but it's fundamentally a little wobbly. And on the right, you have its successor, Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC. It's not based on the sun or stars at all. It's based on the incredibly stable, predictable vibrations of atoms in a laboratory. It is staggeringly precise.
So, the switch finally happened on January 1st, 1972. On that day, UTC officially took over from GMT as the world's time standard. The age of astronomical timekeeping was over, and the atomic age had begun. Which leads us back to our big question. Why are we still talking about GMT?
Right. This is the heart of all the confusion, isn't it? If GMT was officially replaced more than 50 years ago, why is it still an option on your phone? Why do you hear it on the news or see it on flight confirmations? Why didn't it just, go away?
Well, it's because while GMT is no longer the world standard, it's very much alive as the name of a time zone, and not just some historical footnote. Take a look at these maps. From the UK and Iceland all the way down through a huge chunk of West Africa, millions and millions of people live their daily lives on GMT. It's what we now officially call the UTC+0 time zone. And we're not talking about a small list here. You've got Iceland, Ghana, Senegal, Mali, and a whole bunch of other countries that use GMT as their local standard time all year long. It's still a very active, very widely used time zone.
And to really see this in action, check this out. This huge, monumental clock is in Kumasi, Ghana. It's this powerful, modern symbol that the legacy of Greenwich Mean Time is very much alive and well, thousands of miles from London, shaping daily life for millions. And its legacy is also deeply embedded in our language and even our laws. Get this, in the United Kingdom, the official legal definition for civil time is still Greenwich Mean Time. And huge global institutions like the BBC World Service and the Royal Navy, they still use the term GMT. It's a name with a history and an authority that has just proven to be incredibly sticky. So here's the main takeaway. GMT has evolved. It began its life as the world's master clock, the absolute standard that every other clock was set against. Today, it's mostly the name of a time zone. But more importantly, it's the historical anchor point at 0 degrees longitude, the starting line from which our whole modern system of UTC is measured.
Which leaves us with one last thought to chew on. What is Greenwich Mean Time today? Is it just a historical artifact, an echo from the age of steam engines? Is it just an active time zone, no different than any other? Or is it something more? Is it the ghost in our global machine, the original operating system whose DNA is still running in every clock, on every phone, all around the world?